Hello, and welcome to Cthulhu Flashdance Reviews. I'm Greg, and this is my review of Alien, Fate of the Nostromo. Alien, Fate of the Nostromo was designed by Scott Rogers. It is a game for 1 to 5 players where you're the crew of the Nostromo trying to survive in the middle of the first movie where Kane, the executive officer, died because an alien busted out of his chest. And so now, as the rest of the crew, you're scrambling to survive, patch up your ship, and complete a final objective in order to win the game. Also, Ash will be running around as an alternative mode to basically make the game a little harder for you. So let's move on to the review. All right. At the beginning of a game of Alien, Fate of the Nostromos, you're going to set up the board like this, where you will have all of the player characters in the center of the board at the galley. As you can see, there's a label right here that says galley and has the names of all the rooms. So I'm just going to pan over the board so you guys can see. Board is basically a layout of the entire ship with the aliens starting in the nest. Ash, if you're playing with that variant, starting in the med bay. After you set up the game board, what you're going to need to do is set up your objectives. So you're going to shuffle an encounter deck, which is the red encounter deck that you'll find in the box. The back of the encounter deck looks like this. Has a little alien tail on it with the word encounters. As you go through this deck, you will see it has different things that would happen when you encounter either the alien, you'll get scrap, different things will occur, kind of like a mythos card or event card in other board games of co-op style. Also, as you notice, there are these coolant tanks that have been already are on the board, and these little scrap tokens, which are used for different things during the game, including building additional tools and things like the motion tracker. Apologies for the lighting. And also you have a kettle to get Jonesy if you do run into Jonesy. You have the flamethrower and the electric prod, as well as a Gatling gun to basically help you against the alien. And I'll explain what those do here in a little bit, but basically you would put those in an easy to reach pile. Other than that, you have these objective cards that will let you know what you need to do in order to get to the final mission. So the back of the objective cards look like this, say an objective on them, and the front of them have various objectives that you need to accomplish while you're running around the ship. This includes anything from bringing coolant containers to a certain area, bringing items to a certain area like an incinerator or motion tracker or electric prod, and also, like, for example, having all the crew and a certain number of scrap in the galley. If you're playing with 5 players, you would deal out 6 objective cards. Any variant thereof, you basically do the number of players plus 1 for the amount of objective cards you're going to need. So in a 5-player game, you would put face up on the top of the board 6 objective cards. And the objective cards can be completed in any order that you like. Also, there are these giant final mission cards that are like this, and they have various final missions on the front of them. And so every game you're going to choose one of these to play with. It's going to be chosen randomly at the very beginning. And then once you completed all of your objectives, you then can reveal the final mission, and you'll know what you need to do to beat the game. You have final missions like cutting off every bulkhead and events, escaping on the Narcissus, which is the escape pod that Ripley used in the movie, blowing the alien out to space, dealing with Ash as a final boss. Basically, you have my sympathies, and also blowing up the ship, where you're trying to basically get the crew all together to self-destruct the ship and make it so that everybody assembles in the airlock with a coolant canister and one scrap each to basically get out of the ship, survive, and then blow the ship up in your wake. So you would shuffle the final missions, you would choose one and put it at the top of the board. The rest of the missions would go back into the box. Now, if you choose the one with a self-destruct sequence, there is this other token that is the self-destruct sequence that you put in front of the player that revealed that mission, and then every turn the player will add one of these cardboard chits to have a number on them from 1 to 4 on the self-destruct, and when all 4 of them are on the board, the ship will blow up. If you don't escape before all 4 are put on the board, then you lose. If you do escape before then, the ship will blow up and you win the game. So if you're not doing that mission, you can then put that component back in the box. Also, you may notice, again, I'll pan over the board so you can see better. There are these tokens, which are the concealment tokens. You're going to choose 3 of these at random at the very beginning of the game and place them in the specified locations, which is the workshop, the garage, and the equipment. Sorry, not the equipment. That goes to the canister. But the maintenance shaft, all start with those. And those are going to pop up throughout as you are playing the game. These particular things on one side have a vent or a grate. On the other side, they're either going to have an alien face with a number. So this one, this one is the Jonesy one. So this one has the cat with a 1, which basically means that if you don't have the cat kettle to basically capture Jonesy, your morale will go down by 1 when you encounter the cat tile. This is the alien one. As you can see, it's the alien crawling in the crawl space. This also has a number. And then there is the empty vent, which indicates that nothing happens, and so you're perfectly safe at that time. So to start the game, everybody will also get one of these player mats, depending on which player they want. So you got the crew of the Nostromo, so you got Parker, you got Brett, you got Ripley and Dallas. So here's Dallas, here's Ripley, who is obviously the hero of the movie, and also Lambert. Lambert was their pilot. And so basically every character has their own special abilities, but also every player gets a reference card. On one side of the reference card, it has basically what all the items do that you can build, like the flashlight, motion detector, cattle. And then on the other side, all the actions that are available to you. So each character has a special action. For example, Lambert has spend an action to look at the top card of the encounter deck. You may put it at the bottom of the deck. Ripley has spend an action to move another crew member 1 space. Dallas doesn't have any actions, but he gets an additional action that he can do on his turn. So instead of 4, he has 5 actions, because most people only have 4 actions. Brett only has 3 actions. Basically reduces the cost of any item that costs 2 or more scrap by 1. And so even though he has less actions, he doesn't take an action to craft items, and they're cheaper. So all the characters are pretty balanced, with the last one, Parker, having an action that you can spend 1 scrap to your inventory for the space pile, or for the scrap pile, use only once per turn. So in other words, once per turn, you can get a free scrap from the supply. And also, if you notice, on these cards, it has 3 inventory slots that you can use for any item that you pick up, and 1 slot for a coolant tank only. And so once you have chosen your characters, in a 5-player game, you're obviously going to play with all of the characters. You will then start all in the galley, And Ash, if you're playing with the variant, he will start in the med bay, and the alien again will start in the nest. And then you're ready to begin the game. When you take your first turn of the game, in general, all your turns are going to go in order. And you're playing until you can either get enough to reveal your final mission and complete it, or the ship itself, the morale here, which is this morale meter that has a little alien face as a token. If this morale meter, which starts at here, if you're playing with 4 to 5 players, here if you're playing 1 to 3 players, if it ever reaches here, you lose the game. And I'll get to how morale goes down in a little bit. But basically, you're trying to, that's your death clock, essentially. And the ship can also self-destruct. As I mentioned, there's a final mission that will activate the self-destruct. If it does self-destruct, then you will lose. During your turn, you are able to do different crew actions. Your main goal in the beginning of the game is to get these objectives completed. So as you can see with this objective, it is bring an incinerator to the air dock. So obviously what you're going to do, if you want to complete that objective, is you got to go and get enough scrap, build the incinerator or flamethrower token, add that to your inventory, and then you're going to want to move your character to the air dock, which is here, and then you would basically tell the other player to go up. I've completed this objective. I brought the flamethrower to the air dock. You don't need to drop it there. You don't need to like discard anything. You just need to go to that location with the incinerator, and then you completed the objective. Once you completed in a 5-player game all 6 objectives, you would then flip over the final mission. So it is very important to basically focus on getting these objectives done as your main actions while you're exploring. In the first few turns, most time you're going to be going and grabbing the coolant tanks and the scrap that's on the board in order to get enough scrap to craft things, but also to build stuff to basically fight the alien or stay away from Ash if you're playing with that variant. There are 2 phases on your turn. There's the crew phase and then there's the encounter phase. On your turn, you can perform up to the number of actions that are indicated on your card. So once again, that is 4 for everybody but Dallas and Brett. Dallas has 1 extra action, but no special powers. Brett has only 3 actions, but can always be but will be crafting things for really cheap and for free. So that will allow you to most likely kind of, build up your inventory of scrap on Brett. Get Brett to the workshop so he can, and other locations so that he can build, and then basically complete objectives as quickly as possible. After your crew actions, you would then do an encounter phase. In the encounter phase, which is one of these cards, encounter cards, you would flip it over and you look at the front. In this one, you can see there are various icons on the card. Again, apologies for the lighting. And the upper left hand here indicates how much the alien is going to move. This indicates how much morale you're going to lose if you encounter the alien during that movement. This indicates where you're going to pop up to scrap and a concealed token. So in this case, with this card, it says the alien moves 1 space. So I would move the alien towards the closest crew member. So let's say, for example, this guy went over here. This guy is here. This one's here, and this character is here by this turn. Then I would say, okay, he moves what's closest, so I'd count the spaces, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Those are equal. So then we get to choose as a team which one the alien is going to move closest to. In this example, there's only 1 space the alien can move to anyways, so the alien would move 1 space here. If the alien was, say, here, or a crew member was here, and the alien moved 1 space, at that point, you would look at the card, which says that the crew loses 2 morale, which is the one up here that looks like the alien biting. And so then you would deduct your morale meter by 2. And basically, then you would go to equipment storage, which is the location that this card is telling me to put 2 scrap and a concealed token. So I would look over where equipment storage was, and I can see that It would take 2 scrap and a random conceal marker that would be put face down. So that's how that phase works. On your crew action phase, going back a little bit here, you can take one of these 4 actions per an action that you guys have, total actions that you guys have. So if you remember from the beginning, most people have 4, with one character has 3 and one has 5, so you always want to refer to your sheet. Basically, you can move for 1 action. You can pick up or drop an item for 1 action, so you can pick up any number of scrap. You can pick up a coolant item or any item of this type that's in the room. You can drop an item from your inventory to the location, or you could drop any number of scrap. So if you have 3 scrap on your character sheet, there maybe one player needs it for a mission or something. You can then go into the room and drop 3 scrap for 1 action. Another action you could do is you can use or craft an item. So you can use your special ability that's on your card for an action. You can craft an item if you have enough scrap for them. Or if you have an item like a motion tracker or flamethrower, you can spend an action to use that item. And then finally, you can trade. As if you're on a space with another crew member, you can then trade 1 item over to the other crew member. Not 1 item, any items, any number of items. You can trade back and forth for 1 action. So those are the 4 actions that you can do, and you can do those in any order you want. So basically, if it was Ripley's turn, she would do up to 4 actions based on her character sheet. Then after her actions were done, she would do the encounter, and then it would move on to the next player's turn in clockwise order as long as the game has not ended. If you encounter an alien under a token here, like a event token, that alien immediately moves to that location, and you take the amount of morale damage that is on the token. So on this token, I know it's a little hard to see in the camera, it has 2 morale damage that the crew will take. And so then you would move it down 2, and you would then discard this token back to the supply. And I'm making a mess. And so the important thing there is that you want to be careful when revealing concealed tokens when it gets later in the game, because if Jonesy shows up, you also will lose 1 morale unless you have the cattle. And if the alien shows up, it's a variable amount of morale that you're going to lose. So losing morale in this game happens quite a bit. So in the beginning, you shouldn't be too afraid of like taking risks to get the objectives done. And then you want to be more cautious as you get about halfway through the morale meter, because like in Pandemic and other games, they can move pretty quickly when you don't want it to move completely. And so you go around the board, picking up things, building items, doing that kind of stuff until you completed all of your objectives. Once all the objectives have been completed, depending on the number of players, again, it's 1 more than the number of players, you would then reveal the final mission. The final mission will tell you what the theme is. So in this case, blow it out into space. And then there's a setup section that tells you what you need to do to set up for the final mission. And then there's a victory condition. Some of the missions, especially like the self-destruct one, will have also a special defeat section as well. While majority of them have victory conditions only, because if your morale goes down to crew lost, you've lost the game. But these 2 missions in particular have an additional failure objective. So you want to make sure you read the card thoroughly before taking the next turn. So for example, with Blow It Out of Space, it says to set up this one, you want to shuffle the encounter discard pile back into the encounter deck. All the crew members gain an additional ability, which is spend an action to discard 1 scrap token to reveal the top card of the encounter deck. You may choose to put it at the bottom of the encounter deck instead. Then the alien must be adjacent to the docking bay in order to win. So basically, you want to get the alien to basically chase you around the board until you get to the docking bay. So it can be here, can be there, or can be there. And 1 crew member must be in the airlock And then, let's see, where's the airlock? All right, so one crew member needs to be in the airlock, and one crew member must be at the bridge. So you'd have to have somebody else like here. I believe that's the bridge. Yeah, bridge. And then you have to reveal an alien encounter card from the deck in order to win. So you would have to basically be ideally loading the deck till you get I was lucky, an alien encounter, and then basically you've blown the alien out of the airlock and you guys have won the game. And so these different mission cards definitely give a lot of variety to the game. And, like for this one, for example, cutting off every bulkhead. If the crew member with a self-destruct tracker starts their turn with 4 tokens, then Nostromo and her crew is destroyed. So for these two, you basically have 5 turns once you reveal the final mission to complete the mission. And that is pretty much the one we had. In our game, we're going to blow up the ship. And our morale marker was here. And the self-destruct had 4 tokens on it. And it was about to be my turn. And I had the self-destruct and we won the game right before it was my turn. So we would have lost pretty much in 2 different ways had we had one more turn or one bad luck, which was not getting the cattle, because one of the encounters that we turned on near the end was Jonesy, and when you get her in the cattle, it doesn't do the morale hit. And there is also one mission here that requires you to get Jonesy to leave the ship. So that's kind of the gist of the game. As I mentioned before, there is an Ash variant. So Ash, who is slightly concealed in shadows, he in general will only come into play if you're not playing with the Ash variant on the "You Have My Sympathies" final mission. But if you're playing with Ash with the "I Can't Lie About Your Chances" variant, then he starts the game in the med bay, and basically whenever Ash moves, he uses the shortest route to move towards the nearest room or hallway with scrap in them. And basically, if there's scrap or a crew member, he will try to move closest to them. But if there's like let's say an equal number of spaces between scrap and crew, again, the crew decides where Ash moves. If Ash lands on a space with scrap, he stops and discards all the scrap from the room and puts it back into the pile. And if Ash encounters a crew member, he'll stop. Each crew member that is sharing a space with Ash must discard 1 scrap token or decrease the morale by 1. And if there are more than 1 crew member in the same space as Ash, and they cannot discard scrap, let's say they don't have any or they choose not to, then you lose 1 morale for each crew member that can't discard the scrap. So you can start losing morale really quickly if you are like, I want to hang on to the scraps, I want to build like a flamethrower to beat the game. You got to be careful. You got to balance it out. And also the nice thing though is that let's say you have extra scrap, you can then block Ash from going and grabbing, let's say like 2 scrap from a room by having one guy with 1 scrap stop him in his tracks and lose that 1 scrap. So there is a bit of a strategy with blocking Ash or being able to, kind of mitigate him, so to speak, while other crew members are trying to complete their mission. And finally, once the "You Have My Sympathies" mission comes out, the rules for Ash change because now he's doing what the final mission is rather than doing what he does with this I can't lie about your chances variant. And the last thing I'll go over here is these items. And so these items all have different things. So the flashlight will cost you 2 scrap to build. And what it does is basically it reduces the amount lost by 1 for every time you lose morale for any reason, whether it's because you encounter the alien, whether it's encounter Jonesy. Basically, you can use the flashlight, even if it's not your turn, to basically reduce it by 1. And it has unlimited use as well. So you don't discard it or anything after you have used it. The motion tracker, which actually kind of looks like a walkie-talkie in my opinion, Basically is used, costs 3 scrap to build, but once you build it, it can reveal any encounter token that is in a room that is up to 2 spaces away. And then once you reveal that token, if it's an alien, the alien goes to that room, but you don't lose any morale. And also, you will gain an action by finding an alien token. If it's a Jonesy token, then again, you don't lose any morale. And it's a little unclear what happens then, whether you discard the token or whether you can go grab it if you have a kettle. So the way we played it is that the Jonesy stays there and you go grab her with the kettle. You could also play it where that token gets discarded. So you can modify it slightly if you want to make the game a little bit easier or if you want to make it a little bit harder, depending on what mission you have. But there is an FAQ on Board Game Geek that answers officially whether or not that's the design of the game or not. Then there's the grappling hook. And the grappling hook basically costs 3 scrap to build. The grappling hook is really useful because if there's an alien within 3 spaces of you, you can move that alien up to 3 spaces in any direction. So you can push the alien farther away from you. You can move it in a different direction. If you're planning to go, let's say you're here, the alien is here, and you're here, you can move the alien 3 spaces away, but you're like, oh no, there's a guy right there. So I'm just going to move the alien 1 space, so that way I can move for 2 actions to that room. And then this guy's going to go next, and then he moves if the alien doesn't move on to him. And so there are times when that can save your life, or it can save the game for you and your life, or it can be used to divert the alien so that way you guys can get to areas that you want access to. And there are 2 use limits on the grappling hook. So once you use the grappling hook once, you flip it over to indicate that you've used it once, and then once you use it again, you then discard it. The incinerator costs 4. Incinerator costs 4 in order to build it. Has 2 uses as well. And what this does is if the alien is within 3 spaces of you, you basically use the flamethrower and the alien goes back to the nest, and you don't need to draw an encounter card that turn. So it's a really good way to reset the alien's progress and also not have to draw one of these cards at the end of your turn, especially near the end of the game when it becomes really stressful. And then finally, there's the cat cradle that is used for 1 scrap, and then basically if you reveal Jonesy, you capture Jonesy underneath the cat carrier instead of taking the morale hit, and then that Jonesy encounter, which there's 2 of them, gets removed from the game and basically becomes a empty space. And then I forgot there's one more, the electrical, this is a grappling gun, the electrical prod. The electrical prod reduces the amount of morale loss when encountering the alien by 2. So basically, if the alien lands on your space, you can use the electric prod up to twice to basically reduce your morale hit by 2. So that's, in a nutshell, the game of Alien. Let's move on to my overall impressions. Overall, this game is an excellent co-op game. Personally, I love this game. I gave it a 9 out of 10 overall, and the components are nice. The little minis it comes with are really nice. They look really great. The gameplay is really solid. There is some rule questions that did come up, but there's a good FAQ on Board Game Geek if you want to print that out before your first session. There's also a director's cut rules that basically modify the rule set a little bit, and that can be fun to play with as well. There's also the Ash variant that I briefly explained. I recommend playing with that because that does make the game more challenging, but it also makes the game more fun because you're racing against not only the alien, but also avoiding Ash while he's going around grabbing your scrap. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a player going, hey, you go over there, distract Ash while I go over here, grab the grappling hook and be able to push the alien away so we don't lose the game. Ultimately, our game came down to 1 turn. If we had not won on the turn that we did win on, we would have either lost the game due to morale, we would have lost the game because the ship blew up, or we would have lost the game in multiple ways, thanks to the Alien and Ash, that really came down to the wire. And I love it when co-op games do that because it makes it feel worth it. In my opinion, most co-op games you should be losing more oftentimes than you're winning, or ones that you do win, that victory needs to feel like it came so close down to one turn and it was an epic win for you and your group. The Ash variant does make the game a little bit harder, so I highly recommend including that in your playthroughs. And overall, it's a really fun co-op game that can be played even with one person with the way it's designed. So I highly recommend you go out and get this game. Overall, it is 9 out of 10. All right, welcome to Does This Belong on Your Shelf? Well, as you heard from my review, I really love this game, so it obviously belongs on my shelf. However, with that said, if you are not a fan of the Alien franchise, the theme, the overall gameplay does not look that appealing to you, or you're not a huge, big fan of co-op games, then no, this game is not for you, because this game is 100% co-op. There's no trader mechanic, there's no semi-co-op, and it is very thematic with the theme of Alien. If you like the movie Alien, or Aliens, or any of the sequels that have come out over the years, or you're a huge fan of co-op games that come down to the wire, or simply the game looks compelling and interesting to you, then yes, I would say this absolutely belongs on your shelf alongside of other co-op games. This is definitely one of my favorites. This is right up there along with Black Orchestra and other wonderful co-op games, which are some of my favorites, like Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, that I'd be willing to bust down and play at any time. The nice thing about Aliens is it's short. It only takes about 45, 60 minutes at most to finish, and that way you can easily bust this out as a filler game, or even just simply while you're waiting for other people to show up. If someone shows up, the game is going to end quick enough that you don't have to pack it up and put it away. So hopefully that was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed my review. And until next time, this is Greg signing off.